Welcome everyone. We are halfway through our digital marathon. We started this morning very early. It was 5 a.m. here in Italy. We were in Australia starting with a great kickoff. And we have been traveling all around the world, exploring Asia, talking with ministers, scientists, activists, farmers, chefs. We had also a great conversation in China with the Director General of FAO. I'm Sara Roversi, the President of the Future Food Institute, and I'm hosting you together with FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, our partner in this Food for Earth Day Marathon. So I'm very glad with a bit of late to kick off this European session with some amazing guests. And I want to welcome on stage with me, talking about Europe, I want to welcome on stage the permanent representative of the European Commission, so the head of the delegation of the European Commission at the United Nations agencies in Rome. That is Alexandra Benkenberg, because we think that Europe plays really a crucial role. So I really would love to invite Alexandra to join this conversation and to learn what's the crucial role that Europe is playing when we're talking about food and earth.
Well, thank you very much, Sara, and I hope you can hear me. Calling only from Rome, and really it's a great pleasure to be here, and congratulations on organizing this marathon on Food for Earth, and the fact that you have so many people committed to this really shows the importance of the subject. And let me just speak today a bit about the challenges and what we can do, and especially, of course, of what the European Union is doing. And for me, again, as representative, not only to the UN organizations here in Rome, but I know that later on, Sister Smerilli will also speak. I'm also accredited to the Holy See, so I think the partnership we can create is really what is important about this afternoon. So let me just kick off with some remarks, and then hopefully we can have a discussion on that afterwards. Because I think we all know it's easy to identify the challenges. And since we have celebrate this Earth Day for the first time in 1970, the challenges have grown. And we know that, in UNEP last February published a report, Making Peace with Nature report, which is a synthesis of findings from 25 major global assessments. And it concluded that environmental degradation really has weakened Earth's capacity to sustain the growing needs for a nutritious food for a growing world population. There's loss of fertile soil and pollinators, threaten global crop output worth billions of dollars. The global report on food crisis of last year, and this is a partnership set up between the EU, FAO, and WFP, reported the highest global number of acutely food insecure people on record. It revealed that in 2019, some 135 million were in need of urgent food, livelihood, and nutrition assistance. And in times of COVID, it is unlikely that the 2021 report, which will actually be published very shortly, will show any improvements. The world is facing unprecedented challenges of feeding a growing world population on a planet where the climate is changing and the natural world continues to be lost. 20 years into this century, the world has already managed to miss the target to halt biodiversity loss twice. However, the good news, I think, here is that we actually know what to do. The report I referred to also provides a global blueprint to tackle the environmental crisis. The Secretary General of the United Nations has convened the Food Systems Summit with the pre-summit in Rome, and then obviously the summit on the 20th of September in New York, with the objective of mobilizing collective action to transform the way the world produces, consumes, and thinks about food. The summit seeks solutions, and the good news is that by now the stakeholders have proposed hundreds of ideas for game-changing solutions. And my conclusion there is that transformational change at all levels is necessary, but there are a lot of people that are really interested to take up that challenge and really make an effort to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. At the European Union has adopted its own action plan for this transformation, the European Green Deal. And it concludes that the world has to increase the value it gives to the protection and restoration of natural ecosystems, to the sustainable use of resources, and to improving human health. I think it's a really good step that this week all legal steps were concluded to actually put our climate targets into European legislation. So we're making progress. And then just turning to the biodiversity strategy, that is a part of this European Green Deal. It aims at protecting a minimum of 30% of the EU's land and sea areas. But protection is, of course, not enough. This year's theme is Restore Our Earth, and we really need to respond to that call. And we aim at restoring nature and set ourselves concrete targets for degraded and carbon-rich ecosystems, for pollinators, for reforestation, and for free-flowing rivers. The EU Biodiversity Strategy will work in tandem with our Farm to Fork strategy to ensure that we preserve the natural environment, improve food security, and the income of farmers. This week was the Global Symposium on Soil Biodiversity, was hosted by FAO. So I would just like to mention that indeed in this biodiversity strategy, we also aim to protect and restore soils, which is an essential non-renewable resource for the production of food. As head of the European Union delegation here, I think I really want to underline the centrality of multilateralism to achieve our common goals. Global challenges need global responses. And the global recovery after the pandemic, achieving the SDGs, meeting the objectives of the Paris Agreement and other environmental agreements demands even more cooperation between countries. And at the same time, not only between countries, but with a broad range of stakeholders. And it was really interesting to hear you say how many people had already been involved in the talks up to now. Let me, from a Rome perspective, mention one very important multi-stakeholder initiative, the Committee on World Food Security, which I think is a really good example of this multi-stakeholder engagement. And all the work that they have done on guidelines on all aspects of food security and nutrition are really something that we should all use at country level. And the most recent product there, I think, is also really relevant for the Food Systems Summit, but for all of us to look at. It's the voluntary guidelines on food systems and nutrition. To conclude, I believe a lesson we can learn from the pandemic is that similar to the One Health approach, we need collaborative, multi-sectoral and transdisciplinary approaches to respond to the global challenges. And really, we all have to do our effort, step in and to revert environmental degradation and hunger. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think that every time I hear you talking, I feel very proud of what Europe is doing, because I think that the ambitious target we are setting as European can become a leading force to drive this transition that is needed. So thank you so much, Ambassador, for sharing this perspective. And now I would love to involve on stage, let's say, a representative from our partner in this marathon, that is Massimo Torero, the chief economist at FAO. I know that today has been a very intensive day also for you. We are very, very pleased to share this stage with FAO, and I would love to hear the voice of our partner in this marathon, because we all know the connection between food and earth. Today we're celebrating the earth, but there are some priorities, and this pandemic has been accelerating and showing all the biggest paradoxes we see within the food system. So, Mr. Torero, which are the priorities we need to tackle?
Thank you very much, Sara. It's a pleasure to be here. And I think the priorities are very clear. No? We need to find a way in which we can transform the agri-food systems, and I talk of systems in plural, so that we can feed everyone. It's a human right to have access to healthy diets. And today the situation is not that, and it's far from it. We have already, before COVID-19, 690 million people undernourished, and COVID-19 will increase this number in 132 million more people, potentially. And child stunting remains an unacceptable high, and overweight and obesity continues to increase in rich, poor countries alike. So the number of people living with obesity exceeded that of people in hunger in 2012. And more than 3 billion people in the world cannot afford even the cheapest healthy diet. And the current consumption patterns are also going to lead to significant environmental impacts. And this is also reflected in huge inequalities. So how we can change all this so that we can protect our earth, but especially to feed our people? And clearly we need to put very clear targets. Undernourishment has to be reduced everywhere to a maximum of 5%. Healthy diets have to be affordable for all. And overweight has to be reduced to everywhere to the levels of 15%, similar to what we had in 1980s. Obesity needs to be reduced to no more than 5% in any country, and stunting among children need to significantly improve. And we should recover the lost decade that we're going to face because of COVID-19. And one important topic is inequalities. We need to reduce inequalities. And for the planet, we need to achieve a number of carbon and land degradation neutrality, increase the efficiency in the use of water for agriculture, and we need to hit the Paris Agreement target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions to limit global climate warming between 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius. So, huge challenge. So how we can achieve that, and what we can do to try to achieve this, and this is what we are calling the agri-food system transformation, because we need to look at all the challenges, not only on achieving the access to healthy diets, but also looking at all these environmental constraints that we are facing. And I am just going to bring 3 areas where I think it will be extremely important to work. The first one is to increase resilience, and that's central, because we have to be human being centric here, and nature, and trying to assure neutrality on the impacts of nature. But to be able to provide this capacity of the system to be resilient, we need to focus on 2 areas. One is to be capable of minimizing risks. That means vulnerabilities. And the second one, to be able to cope with risks when they occur. So to minimize risk, we need to have predictive power. We need to have early warning systems. We also need to look at the One Health approach so that we avoid the problems like the one we are facing today and new potential problems. But we also need to ensure to find ways to create access to insurance and to make data more accessible. Technology, innovation, and data are central in all this. But we need to find a different way to do that, because technology normally and innovation tend towards monopolies, few companies, and that's what we see in the agricultural sector, controlling the technologies. And if we look at other sectors, for example, the cancer research, we have found that the way cancer research has evolved so fast in the last 5 or 7 years was because of this human body genomics project of cancer, which basically brought all the technologies around the world and create a common pool resource that allow us to gain synergies. We need to do something similar in innovation and technology in the case of agriculture. But we also need to cope with the risks. And that first, we need to focus on the most vulnerable through social protection programs, align incentives, improve trade and interregional trade. Short value chains and long value chains and global value chains shouldn't be on conflict. We shouldn't be polarizing. We should complement each other. And we need to build infrastructure that will allow us to reduce food loss and waste, and investments in digital technologies. So we have this concept of 4 key accelerators that we believe should achieve this: innovation, technology, and data, and real-time data. but also the concept of complements. And here comes my idea of the parallel with the cancer research. I believe that we can break this market structure, which is so concentrated, and give access to technologies and to science to all farmers. A second area where all these accelerators can play a role is the story what we are observing in aquaculture, and how aquaculture has been increasing over time, and how important it will be, because aquaculture will allow us to increase efficiency. So capture of fisheries reached a maximum global production in the mid-1980s and has remained remarkably constant since, despite much regional variations. At the same time, an old production industry, aquaculture started to grow and now matches the capture of fisheries in volume. And in our scenarios, it can even increase and surpass. And one has to remember that fish is the most efficient converter of food to flesh, because they do not regulate their temperature and life in water, thus requiring less skeleton investment. It outpaces chicken, pork, and certainly beef in their efficiency. With 1 kilogram of feed, you get 1 kilogram of fish, but the same feed will only get 150 grams of beef and 280 grams of pork. So this is clearly an example of how we can gain efficiency, increase nutrition, and access food to all needed people. A second example, which I believe is central, is to build back better, but especially focus on the infrastructure that is needed for digital technologies. We know digital technologies are central today, and it's not so expensive to achieve universal availability, not access, but universal. Everybody can have access to it with their own connection. And for example, in Africa, this could imply a maximum of $139 billion, or in average $97 billion. In total, in the world, we're talking of $2,100 billion. Compare that to the plans of reconstruction that we're doing that because of the recession. Only the reconstruction of one of the developed countries will allow us to do this enormous investment that will put everybody in the world to have access to technologies. And the final topic, where I also think we can make a huge transformation, is food loss and waste. Why? Because just the reduction of food losses, which is from the producer to the wholesale market included, will improve efficiency of the use of our natural resources, will increase, if we improve quality, for example, we will increase the price premium to farmers, and will also make us reduce emissions. And in the case of waste, we will also reduce significantly emissions, which is just a behavioral change. So again, I think there are good ways in which we can achieve what we want, but we need to start to act now, and we need to do it in such a way that is responsible also for our earth and our environment. Because if not, we won't have an environment anymore. But again, let me repeat, it needs to be people-centric. We don't want a world without people. We want a world with people, which is sustainable. Thank you very much, Tara.
Thank you so much. I would say should be people-centered, but also life-centered, because if we include life, we combine people and nature. So thank you so much. We have been talking exactly this morning with the Director General about the need of starting helping people understanding the complexity of the food systems. You have been talking about that right now, showing how deep is the complexity of food systems. But now I want to start from here to involve Alessandra Smerilli, because I think that reading the Sustainable Development Goals, exactly as the Farm to Fork strategy, as the European Green Deal, under the lens of integral ecology, can be a good starting point to understand how crucial it is to put people and life really at the epicenter, and understand that we need to address the topic of ecology from many different perspectives, talking about political ecology, economical ecology, human, social, and also environmental ecology, but everything is strictly interconnected. And there are very tangible actions you have been talking about, tackling food waste, as well as all the other issues that you have been mentioning are absolutely a priority. Technology is available, is becoming also accessible. We need also to empower people and teach them how to use it and implement it. And I think that FAO is doing a great job with the e-learning academy. That is a starting point, because the e-learning academy of FAO is accessible for all in many different languages, free. And we, of course, are doing our best to spread it massively. but need to be spread even more, because we need to empower farmers. We need to empower people working within the food industry. So thank you so much to Maximo Torero, Chief Economist at FAO, and thank you so much for the work you all are doing. And now I want to involve Alessandra Smerilli on stage with me, because I would love to hear from her how we can read this concept of finding the balance between humans, food, feeding the people, and feeding the planet and caring about the planet.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you all for inviting me today. It's an honor and a privilege to be here to discuss such important topics in such symbolic day. So, as we are celebrating the Earth Day, let us not forget that the way we are currently producing and consuming food is having a significant impact on the environment and human health, as we know. All aspects of food security are potentially affected by climate change, including food access, utilizations, and price stability. Alarming data was published just yesterday by the World Food Programme. Land degradation and loss of soil fertility affect 3.2 billion people and threatens food security for a growing part of the population. Once again, the poorest are most vulnerable, and the most vulnerable are among those paying the highest price. Today, I'm speaking as one of the coordinators at the Vatican COVID Commission, a commission that Pope Francis established in March 2020 at the very beginning of this ongoing pandemic, with the mission of preparing the future in response to the pandemic. The pandemic has especially exposed the plight of poor and the great inequality that reigns in the world. This is the reason why the Pope established this commission in order to develop responses and policies towards a sustainable recovery post-COVID-19 for all, not just for few privileged ones. Hunger, Pope Francis says, is criminal because food is a fundamental right. Looking at long-term structural solutions, the Vatican COVID Commission suggests, among others, 3 broad shifts in the food system to protect our common home while fighting against hunger and malnutrition. First of all, we are aligned with Maximo Torero, reinforce resilient food supply chains and distribution. Reinforcing the food supply chains both locally and internationally, ensuring infrastructures to connect small farmers with local and national markets to strengthen local community. Reduce food waste and vulnerability to external shocks. Second, reduce the concentration of market power. One of the greatest issues in food distribution is the concentration of market power among a handful of operators. For example, nearly 70% of profits from global trade in agricultural products are concentrated in the hands of few firms. This market power translates into insufficient wages for those who work in the food sector. And I think this is a matter to be an issue to be addressed. Third, transform our food systems toward more sustainable pathways, promote a circular model of production and an efficient use of resources, enhance local knowledge and practice with the aim of to ensure better protection of biodiversity in accordance with local food systems and to promote sustainable use of lands and oceans. Even of the past 2 years, the pandemic, the growing impacts of climate change and the disaster displacement have exposed deep-rooted and systematic inequalities in our society. It is the time for healing and transformation. Time to build a fairer, more equal and sustainable world so that we may look ahead with hope. Going forward, may we respond to the crisis of care with a culture of care in Pope Francis' word, and create a way to foster international solidarity with the goal of ensuring food security. So we are here dealing with these issues, open to collaboration. We are collaborating with the Future Food Institute, with FAO. We are trying to do our best to listen, connect, inspire for a better world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suor Alessandra. SDG 17 probably is the one that is connecting all of us, partnership to reach the goals. Thank you so much to Ambassador representing the European Commission at FAO and also at the Vatican. So thank you so much for all your insightful suggestions. I think that we are learning so much out of this marathon. It is very, very much a long lesson,